Alexis Smith will be joining us, the executive director for the New Haven Legal Assistance. She'll be she'll be kind of signing in shortly. Um, New Haven Legal Assistance is celebrating its 60th, literally 60th, more than half a century existence here in New Haven. And she's joining us momentarily. Alexis Smith. Alexis,
Hi,
good morning, afternoon, and evening to you.
how you doing? There's four of you.
There,
Three.
there's at least three or four of me that can be seen with the naked eye, and then if you get into chakras and auras and antecedents, who knows where my spirit might have been dwelling before I was born. Not to mention
Yeah, right.
where it might go when it gets back into the earth. So you can see I'm in kind of a metaphysical mood, but
Yes,
what else is new, right? That comes with my persona. So I guess
that's
gotta
right.
live up to my multiple belief systems or unbelief systems. Uh I was just giving a little intro about you before you came on, just to kind of expedite the show. We have about 50 minutes or so, so I want to really kind of uh maximize the time, and thanks again for being available. You know, I know you're celebrating your 60th. I mean, you weren't there 60 years ago. This is what your 10th or 13th year. How long have you been with the New Haven Legal Assistance?
Yeah, so I am in my eighth year as executive director. So and then I was there 4 years prior to that. So
Great. Okay. So,
12.
so yeah, good 12 or so. Just for point of clarification, when I mentioned to you at a previous meeting that I was an intern, the clarification is that when I was in divinity school light years ago, uh, rather than going, and I went there with not a vocational purpose, but you and the curriculum requirements were minimal. But if you weren't going to go to a church, in terms of your
Mhm.
work study or your practice kind of thing, you had to choose some sort of field-based involvement. So one of my field-based assignments was at the New Haven Legal Assistance. So I wasn't an intern through from a legal intern. And I don't remember
Mhm.
much of what I did. You guys were in State Street at that point, corner State and Elm,
Okay.
light years
Yep.
ago. I do remember doing some intake. I do remember that part, like filling out paperwork kind of thing. Um, and as I mentioned, Danforth was involved there. Let's jump to your 60th anniversary. Talk about some of the things you've done already. I want to jump to we're going to talk about your upcoming event at Gulf Street Park. But Barber, you're going to have an international global spokesperson, prophet, if you will, seminal figure here in the world. Really, to be able to grab him and to get on his schedule is an achievement.
Yeah.
I mean, people need to know this whenever William Barber speaks. He has 50 or so or more options that day in terms of what he might choose to do. Uh, so for whoever pulled the strings, and I'm not going to ask you who pulled the string in this regard, but to get him to commit, so tease people a little bit about your fall activity, and then we'll kind of work back to the Gulf Street and some of the involvements and the purpose and mission of the New Haven Legal Assistance.
Sure. So our second to last event this year is September 25th. It's our big gala. And Reverend Barber is, in fact, the keynote speaker, which we are so excited about. I think the work that he has done over the course of his life really speaks to our mission, really putting individuals who are living at the margins, whether it's because of a disability, whether it's because of low income, whether it's because of being discriminated against. All of that work is all the work that we embody. So we're really thrilled to have him as part of that celebration. It will be at Anthony's Ocean View, and it's really meant to bring a lot of our supporters together, a lot of our community partners together, and really gather and be together, but also hear Reverend Barber's message and word to us. So we're really excited about that. The last event that we have, actually after that, about a month and a half after that, is November 8th, and it's an alumni gathering. And as you just mentioned, Tom, we have a number of really esteemed alums that have come through New Haven Legal Assistance, who have gone on to be judges, who have gone on to lead other nonprofits, who have become partners in law firms, and have really kind of run the gamut in terms of the work that they've been able to do. So it's an opportunity to bring a lot of those folks back together in really kind of a traditional college or high school reunion setting back together. We actually did one of these already this year. And what was really nice and special is that we invited all of our staff to come as well. So staff were able to engage with really some of the, I'd say, the founders and people who have set the stage for the work that we've been able to do over the last 60 years. So we're excited about that as well.
And so again, it's kind of a select group. Do I get a quasi honorary invitation or
We could make an invitation.
pass an ordinance kind of a special.
Well,
Yeah.
it's actually, it's interesting that you mentioned this because we have targeted alums who have been both staff here at LEA, but also interns. But I think we've focused primarily on law school interns. But now you raised the question about the number of
Absolutely
interns who have not been law students who come through here. So we'll have to do that research and make those.
do the research, pass an ordinance. I mean, don't forget about the lumpen proletariat. I mean, this is consistent with William Barber. We all have a water to that. I mean, I was there. I mean, I was there before you were born, but I won't go there. So because you're young at heart, if nothing else. And before we go to and we're talking about your mission and your services, and before we go to Gulf Street Park, as I was thinking about this show today, Alexis, my mind went back to the Yale Law School maybe 4 or 5 years ago. You had Richard, well, his last name escapes, the Color of Money. It was talking about governmental policies and segregation and housing. How did that fit into? And I think you were either on the panel or either moderated at the law school.
I had the opportunity to moderate his talk, and actually that was put on by an organization called Open Communities Alliance. And that book, The Color of Law, really highlights, I think, the numbers of structures and systems that have been put in place over time to segregate us, to keep people who have low income in that setting, whether it's because of education, whether it's because of housing policies. He has spent a lot of time actually researching housing policies and redlining. So that was really the root of the book, the source of the book. And so the colors that he uses is actually imagery to show ways in which housing patterns, education patterns, transportation patterns have really been used to isolate groups, have been used to separate groups. And so I had the opportunity to moderate, I think, because so much of his work relates to ours, because I think we see kind of the back end of that, right? I mean,
Indeed.
We are representing individuals who, we're not going to get into services in a little bit, but we're representing individuals who have been really victims of a lot of those systems and structures, whether it's lack of affordable housing, whether it's limited educational opportunities, whether it's limited employment and work opportunities. And so how that manifests in the legal context and how that limits people's ability to really maintain and secure basic human needs. So there is a direct through line between our history and all the systems that have been put in place and the work that we do today, every day.
And I really appreciate your sharing that connection, because when you think of Barber on one end coming up and Richard, the event at the law school a few years ago, and people say New Haven Legal Services, why are we needed? Why are you guys needed? Are you just an offshoot? Are you just for poor people? But again, it's really you're examining and certainly you're protesting with the arm of the law. But unfortunately or fortunately, I mean, the real deal is that there seems to be some laws that have been passed in the past, rather, some people's intentions that have erected barricades to the fulfillment of life for all, and that just is so sobering, and it's even difficult to talk about in 2024 in my mind. You've been around the track a little while. You've been on a few soccer fields. You've been around the world a little bit. these and my stuttering just comes to the fact that we have this upcoming election and all the events of the last week. But your day in and day out activity, and let's deal with that. Is these barricades are erected, and whether they're intentional or subconscious or just benign, but they're there, and it just bewilders me. So let me jump in. You recently were involved with a press conference. I think it was three or 4 weeks ago about someone who returning citizen and his or her they were being evicted or something, or their access is just give people a little anecdote just about that. And in 2024, we still are encountering these issues that are not that are let's be frank, oppressing people.
Yeah. So, um, one of the biggest areas of work that we do is in housing. And so we represent folks who are being evicted either for, allegations of non-payment of rent. Sometimes it's for nuisance. So there's a whole host of reasons that a landlord can evict someone. And one of those situations can happen also on the front end when people are applying for housing, right?
Mm.
And so one of those reasons is when people have certain convictions for certain offenses, and it's typically a very limited number of convictions. And so we had a client who came to us who had a very, very old conviction on their record, and they were being denied housing because of that. And so we became involved. And I think one of the things that works really well, not only for us, but I think for clients and client community, is when we can partner with other organizations who are doing similar work or working with our clients and client community. So this became one of those partnerships. We were working with people from the ACLU. We were working with local organizations that are working directly with people who are returning from incarceration or have convictions. And so this individual had a very old conviction, not necessarily a violent offense, and was being denied housing. And so we actually filed a case with the CHRO, which is the Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities, in order to get him reinstated and get him housing along with his partner. And so we were able to get a lot of press around the event,
Yes.
partly because it is such a significant issue for a number of people, but also because the landlord is one of the largest landlords in the city of New Haven at this time. So if they have a policy around denying an individual or people certain kinds of housing because of whatever reason, then essentially that limits that individual or that family's ability to get housing in a lot of places because they have, I don't want to use the word monopoly because I know that's a certain kind of thing.
Well, a
But
large market share, absolutely.
perfect. That's great.
Significant market share.
Yeah. So they essentially will be unable to get housing in a number of different places because this particular company owns so many. So that was another kind of impetus. But it was also to draw attention because, I mean, we know very, very well that we don't represent everyone in the city or in our service area who has a legal problem. But we know that there are, for every one person that we represent or two people that we represent, there's probably 50 or 100 or 200 more with a very similar issue. So raising awareness about this so that when we are in the legislature in the next legislative session, or if this becomes an administrative policy that can be changed, now we've got some energy and some focus on it, and we can align with those partners or get those partners to align with other partners and really change the narrative around this.
Talk to me about you're going to be in Gulf Street Park soon. And that's not novel for you. I mean, in terms of the outreach, I'm really pleased to see that. But whose idea was that, and what do you hope to accomplish? As some people know, we have 30 alders here in New Haven, and I happen to be honored to be the alder of Ward 28. So Gulf Street Park is in my ward, and so it's always had a near and dear spot for me in my heart. But now it's even more harmonious. But you're going to be coming to my neighborhood soon. You and your crew invading.
Yep. Invading, totally.
Fill me in.
So, I was here actually at New Haven Legal Assistance for our 50th anniversary. And so we did a very traditional, I would say, legal aid thing, right? We had a gala similar to the one that we're having in September, where Reverend Barber is the guest keynote speaker. And we did that. And it was great. And there were, we had a really good turnout. Um, a lot of our supporters, a lot of our friends came. We wanted to do something different this year for our 60th. And so we were trying to think, what could be different? What could we do? We know we wanted to raise money, right? Because that's what you do on big anniversaries.
Right.
So the gala is really geared to be the money making thing. But we also wanted to celebrate with the community in kind of a different way, because we know that not everyone can afford to come to a gala or wants to come to a gala, right? Or has the ability to do that. And actually, I kind of stole the idea a little bit. I a couple of years ago, you might remember the Graustein Memorial Fund had an anniversary, and I can't remember if it was the 20th or 25th, and they did a series of parties kind of around
Mm.
the state.
Hmm.
And I thought that was such a great idea, to be able to engage with all the different neighborhoods and communities that they serve, and give people the opportunity to come and celebrate with them. And so I was like, that's really neat. I want to try that. And so then the idea kind of came about having, trying to do a community block party.
Mm.
Um, so that's really how it came to be.
Hmm.
And then we started looking at locations. We are working very closely with board members and a small group of staff. And so just started brainstorming what that could look like. And so we're pretty close. It's coming up. So we're really, really excited about what the opportunity brings.
So what's the date? Give me the date. Don't
So
leave me hanging.
it's Saturday, August 10th, from 12 to 5. The rain date is actually Sunday, August 11th, but we
Good for
are
you.
we're not anticipating any rain. So
Good.
August 10th. And we are going to have food. We have kids activities, family-friendly activities. We have invited a number of local community organizations and nonprofits who provide services to the community in different ways. So they will be there with tables and information to hand out. So yeah, it will be kind of the traditional entertainment, um, DJ, and are in the process of securing a couple of local bands and local musicians, um, potentially a dance team. So yeah, we're
Excellent.
very excited.
Excellent. And
Yeah.
this will be the opportunity. And so let's just dive in. So for folks to come, they'll be able to pick up more information about your whole menu and your whole litany of I don't like the word services, but just the helping
Mhm.
hand. And what might some of those be? You mentioned housing already, education. Give us a little feel for your menu.
Yeah, so education is another one, and so we represent kids who have been identified for special education services, not to use the services word,
Hmm.
but who have plans in place at school. And sometimes those plans need to be shored up a little bit.
Mm.
And so working with school staff to do that. We also represent kids who have been moved for expulsion from school. So
Mm.
they have allegedly committed or violated a school policy,
Hmm.
and they're being removed from school. And so there's a hearing actually that students are afforded, and we will represent students in those hearings and families in those hearings. Um, we also do another kind of juvenile kid related work, and that's in a child protection context.
Mm.
So children who've been removed from their families because of allegations of abuse or neglect,
Hmm.
we represent the kids in that process. We also do benefits work. So those for individuals who have been denied disability benefits.
Mm.
Um, we will represent folks in those kinds of cases, as well as any other kind of cash assistance. So whether
Right.
it's SNAP, formerly called food stamps, um, TANF, family needs,
Hmm.
all of that kind of stuff, we do as well. Employment. So representing folks who have been victims of wage theft. And there are a number of undocumented individuals who
Mm,
become victims of wage theft, where folks think that they can, employers think they can take advantage of them. We see that a lot in the restaurant industry. We see that a lot in domestic workers, those kinds of things. What am I missing? I am missing family. So
mm,
we represent primarily victims and survivors of domestic violence.
mhm.
And, if those folks need restraining orders, if they need divorce petitions, if they need custody, help with custody cases, we do that as well. And then one of our other big areas is immigration.
Mm,
So most of the work that we do there is defensive immigration. So these are folks who are facing deportation, some individuals who have been detained in detention facilities. So we do a lot of that work as well. And a lot of the immigration work is really community driven or community based. And when I say that, I
mm,
mean a lot of our referrals are coming from other community groups. Some of our advocacy and actually legal work is partnering with those other individuals, community groups as well. Yeah,
mm.
so that's kind of the menu list.
Boy, I mean that's and again, I guess for people to see that the scope and I was anxious to do this show, but it dawns on me that uh, you already have a significant caseload. But if there's somebody that might need your services and help, what's the best way for them to reach out to you to kind of rub shoulders, get a feel for if they're qualified, quote unquote, to kind of be considered as a client?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we work pretty hard to have a number of different portals and ways for people to get to us. So you can call us directly. You can walk in. We have a statewide hotline as well. We get a lot of referrals from community partners. So
Mm,
someone who might, be working with Clifford Beers, Cornell Scott, school district,
hmm.
um, the local domestic violence agencies, all of
Good,
those places
good, good. So you're located?
send cases to us pretty regularly. I'm sorry.
You're located at in terms of the
So
walk-ins.
we are right on Orange Street. We are 205 Orange Street, right downtown, across from the Hall of Records. Um, so yeah,
And
we went
your telephone number. This is your pitch,
203,
this is your
I know,
pitch.
203 946 4811. And our hotline number is, I'm gonna have to look it up, but but
Okay,
that's the best
look
way
it
to
up.
reach us is actually to
Have your people look it up. We have another 45 or so minutes. And I guess the reason I'm kind of emphasizing this point that you are, as you say, very extremely accessible. And it's what's the need for it? We have about 20, 30 minutes so we can kind of take a moment to see what crosses our mind. But can you imagine there to be in 20 or so years still a need for legal assistance services?
Mm, mm. I mean, my hope is that no, my hope is that we would be an organization that would be phased out,
Hmm.
um, because we would have, an abundance of things, right? We would have an abundance of housing that's safe and decent and affordable, right? So
Hmm.
people would never be facing a loss of their housing.
Yes.
Um, we would never see families being separated, right?
Hmm.
Because families would have what they need. So, so many of the situations we see in the child protection context, I think, are the impact or the manifestation of stress on families,
Mm.
right? And so parents who um, might need some time to fix, if you will, which is a simple word, fix a substance abuse issue,
Hmm.
right? Or parents who need time to find more secure employment, those kinds of things. And so people would have access to resources that wouldn't put them under such stress that they ultimately either take things out on their children or are not providing a safe environment for
Right.
their children. It's a better
Right.
way to think about it. People would have the skills that they need, whether that's academic skills, trade skills, whatever that is, to be able to provide for themselves in the employment context. There would
Hmm.
be an abundance of jobs and employment so that
Yes.
people wouldn't have such limited income that they couldn't afford a private attorney, right? So those that's I think are or my vision. I shouldn't speak
Yeah. Right.
for all of LA, but I think that's my vision. I think we tend to think in such terms of scarcity, um, and we've been conditioned that way that we can't provide for everyone. And I
Yes.
think that's one of the ways that we see things happening here in terms of the clients that we represent.
You were as a kind of a related issue in terms of your community outreach. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I do wear glasses, so I don't have 20/20 vision, but I believe I saw you and some siblings marching, walking down Dixwell Avenue, and on a particular Sunday, and under the guise of the Freddie Fixer Parade. Am I imagining things, or did it actually take
We did.
place?
We that actually took place. Actually took place. So we were really honored to be able to participate in the Freddie Fixer parade. Um, this is actually our third time marching. So the first year, I think it was maybe 2018, 2017, something like that. So we were really excited. We actually had a real banner this time. We had kind
Indeed,
of
indeed.
put a put a makeshift banner together in past years. We had T-shirts. So we were really excited. I mean, I have watched that parade, countless
Yes.
times. I'm very honored and blessed to be a member of Dixwell Avenue Congregational United Church of Christ, and so that's kind of a tradition. We finish service and then just kind of sit out there and watch the parade. Um, so it was really, really nice, I think, to be a participant this year again. Um, and I think just to see like the crowd of people that came out, I mean, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But also the number of organizations,
Yes.
particularly the youth-driven organizations that participate and the excitement around that. Um, so it's a really great experience.
Well, that
And
was,
it was kind of interesting too to see people's reaction to having us out there because I think some folks were surprised
indeed. That's why
surprised.
I mentioned I was surprised. I was surprised and
Were you
pleased.
one of the ones? Yeah.
I was one of the ones, but surprised and pleased.
So yeah, so I think we really want to try to make that an annual regular thing for us.
But and it gets people gets seeing our richness and what happens when I mean just the metaphor of the parade and our unity and our partnerships, what that can be. Can we just take that from a one-off from a particular day in the springtime to just every day just understanding that we are all connected, that we all can march together, that we all can move in the same direction together. I mean, just the whole metaphor of the parade, and it was a lovely day, and the turnout was tremendous. You mentioned
Yeah.
Dixwell United Church of Christ. Talk to me a little bit about because I was at a meeting when you and some of your staff were able to really just rub shoulders and present information to people that I think some people might have known, but most of us, if this was new information or just gave us more details, and just it's that Johnny Appleseed passing, planting the seed and asking others to kind of pass along the information. Talk about that for a
Yeah.
second.
Yeah. Yeah, and this goes back to one thing I mentioned a little while ago about, we know that we just don't have the capacity to represent, everyone in the area who needs representation, right? And so the more that we can do to really equip people with knowledge of what their rights are, um, with knowledge of maybe how to get to other organizations that could also provide assistance to them. I mean, I think we really take a lot of pride in that, and that's been something that we've really tried to enhance over the last few years. And so we really try to do a lot of outreach. And so we attend as many events as we can. In fact, I think Fixer was kind of the culmination of something that we had been doing all spring, which was we
Mm-hmm.
were attending all of the Arts and Ideas neighborhood festivals.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were able to participate in Dixwell's festival that weekend, and then participate in the Fixer that Sunday. So Yeah, I mean, so the event that you attended was, one of many outreach, know your rights presentations that we try
Yes.
to do throughout the city or throughout our service area on a regular basis. And sometimes we pick specific substantive areas or practice areas to talk about, depending upon who the crowd is, right?
Hmm.
Or
Hmm.
who the audience is, because we know that they will be interested in something specific. And other times we give kind of a general overview of what we do, who we are, how you can access us. So we really try to cater. And so we've really worked hard to have our written materials that talk about our work, that give people information about when you go to court, like this is what you can expect.
Mm.
We've worked really hard to make those in plain language.
Hmm.
We have a staff member here who does a great job with that. And also designing them in a way that they're appealing to the eye, easy to read, all of that stuff. Um, so the one that you attended, we talked a lot about education,
Hmm.
um, because we knew that there were grandparents in the room that were
Yes.
caretakers of kids who were of school age. We talked a little bit about benefits and how to access benefits as well. But I always learn something every time I do one of these,
Mm.
right? Based upon either questions that people have, suggestions. So I've, done a number of them, and sometimes people will give feedback, right?
Yes.
Unsolicited, but feedback about, um, when they reached out to us, or information that they heard in the community that either maybe wasn't accurate, and how we can clear that up and clarify that, or about needs that people are facing.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so it makes us think about, the priorities that we've selected, and how do we go about, selecting our work, and choosing the clients that we represent, all of that kind of thing. So I think it really is a educational opportunity both ways for us to impart some of our knowledge and expertise on community groups and community members, but also for us to hear kind of what the direct experiences have been, of the clients that we're working with.
Stay on that point for a second, Alexis, in terms of your, if I'll use the terms, your strategic planning. Where do you see are some needs newly emerging needs, or there's some needs now that require more emphasis? I mean, when you mentioned your whole portfolio of education, and you didn't mention disabilities, but I'm sure, but you deal with disabilities as well,
Yeah.
and benefits,
Yeah.
and compensation, wage theft. Are these things competing with one another? Or do you have
Mm.
resource limitations in this regard? Or are there some hot buttons that you really want to kind of just, fires that are emerging that you really want to kind of put out, and other things that might be just simmering?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting you said that, and one of the things that we've been hearing a lot lately over the last probably year and a half is we've had this significant emphasis on housing.
Hmm.
And part of that is because, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but in 2022, the legislature passed a right to counsel, state legislature passed a right to counsel law. And so that what that does has provided us and the other legal aid programs around the state with an influx of funding that has allowed us to hire more staff to handle housing matters.
Hmm.
And since 2020, since the pandemic, there's just nationally been a lot more attention around housing,
Hmm.
whether it's eviction prevention, whether it's affordability, but just generally there's an awareness now that I think people didn't necessarily have before, even though we've like always had a housing crisis,
Hmm.
or for
Right.
many
Yes.
decades, that's been a thing. Um, and so one of the things that I think has been something we've tried to shift the narrative around is that we have become we're only doing housing, right? We have
Hmm.
neglected or not doing that work that we've been doing for many, many years. And so I think educating the community to let them know, no, we're still open to take family cases. We're still open to
Yes.
take benefits cases. We're still open to take immigration cases. Um, that's really been a message that we've been trying to drive home
Good.
to folks, because there
Good.
is this perception. Um, I never want things to be necessarily competing, but I will say that in the time that I've been in this seat, I have seen these ebbs and flows of,
Hmm.
what becomes of interest based
Hmm.
upon either a local conversation, state conversation. So housing for the last couple of years has been one of those things. I will say after the 2016 election, immigration became one of those things, right? So we
Mhm.
saw a lot of interest from supporters and donors and community organizations to help us increase our capacity to represent folks who were being separated from families, who were being removed from the country. And so that was a thing. So you tipped it off by talking about the the next election.
Yes.
Um, who knows what will how that will manifest itself, right? And what we'll see. And there have been, and I can just speak about this in the immigration context. I don't know about other substantive areas, but the immigration advocates and attorneys and community-based organizations have been having a series of conversations already about what that will look like, what post-November could possibly look
Mhm.
like, and what a response could be. Because I don't necessarily think that we were as organized in 2016 as we should have been in terms of being responsive and addressing the needs of our client community,
Mm.
at least in the immigration context. So
And when you mentioned and I appreciate your sharing that, when you mentioned the housing crisis, my mind went to that Mary and Joseph kind of encountered a housing crisis on their sojourn to Bethlehem, but that but that's a metaphorical aside. Talk to me about wage theft for a second, because as an alder, and I do appreciate that you understand that you're talking to, although I wear several hats, your organization is sometimes has to remind the city of our responsibility. So I appreciate your kind of chatting with me and in terms of full transparency. But the
yeah,
wage theft issue definitely has come to my attention through some various meetings in City Hall, where groups have kind of and testified. Ladies and men have kind of said that money's been stolen or not given to me.
yeah.
It's just talk about that a little bit. I mean, this is just very disturbing.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the issues or concerns that we have seen is that actually the Department of Labor, so the state agency, has a role in investigating these claims. And so people who feel that they have been, either uh, not given wages at all, or given a reduced wage, or not paid overtime. I think that's
Mm.
another, kind of common thing that we see.
Mhm.
They have the ability to go to the Department of Labor and make a claim. I think a couple issues we've seen with that. One is DOL is incredibly backed up, right? So they have a number of claims and they don't necessarily have enough staff to be able to work through the
Mm.
claims. The other thing that we see, though, is because many of the individuals that we have represented over the years who are victims of wage theft are also undocumented immigrants. And there is a fear
Mm.
many times in that community of bringing things, either filing a lawsuit, going to a state agency, even coming to legal aid to be able
Mm.
to make this known. And so that fear is very real. And so there's cases that we know that we don't see, or cases that we know that are not brought to DOL because of
Mm.
that anxiety and that fear. So I think one thing that we try to do is a lot of education around. So
Good.
what people can know ahead of time, right? Um, Keeping track on your own, right,
Hmm.
of the
Hmm.
hours that you worked, documenting things like that. Um, so if there is some kind of ambiguity, you've got the ability to hear my receipts, so to speak.
Yes.
Um, so that's one thing. Some of the cases that we have had, we actually have filed in federal court, right, and gone through that process. Um, but again, you have to have, a client who is willing, interested to do that. Sometimes those cases are not quick. I would say the majority of the weights of cases that we have had over the years, we've negotiated settlements with,
Mm.
and so been able to get, back pay for clients that are owed. And I think one of the most effective things that has happened in those cases is actually the community pressure.
Mm.
So the community-based organizations who might be working with a client or client's family, if they can put some pressure, And that could be in the form of like, boycotting some of these places,
Hmm.
protesting out front. I mean, all of the things.
Hmm.
Um, there was one particular employer, they actually said the thing that they wanted the most in the negotiation that we were working with is they wanted us to remove a Facebook post that we had made about the case. So we had made a post about the case, and that post, named the employer. It was not, you know, visceral or anything like that. It
Hmm.
really was just like, this is what's happening.
Yes.
But it had been liked and shared so much that
Mm.
they just
Mm.
wanted it taken down.
Yes, it went
Um,
viral. Yes.
so yeah, completely better. So yeah, all of those strategies, I think in some of our work we've really tried to employ more and more in terms of using social media, getting the word out, um, working with community groups that can, maybe take actions that we're,
Hmm.
not necessarily able to take for whatever reason. So yeah.
Excellent. We have about 15 or 10 to 15 more minutes. So, and I know you have a busy schedule and appreciate you taking the time. Uh, let's go back to your upcoming fundraiser and how people can kind of donate or be a part. Because I mean, you're an enterprise. You're open to. I'm assuming you're open to donations and community financial support. Is that fair to
Very
say?
open. We are completely wide open for donations. So actually, we have a lot of opportunities to support and donate to us. Going to our website, www.nhlegal.org. You can find, we have a current, what we call a spring summer mail that's happening. So that's a campaign that we run every year. But in addition to that, we have sponsorship opportunities available for both our block party and for our gala. And so we have all different levels. The lowest level is $500, and the highest level is $10,000.
Hmm.
Um, and so we have one $10,000 individual sponsor right now. So if you want to match that,
There you
please
go.
feel free to do so. Um, but yeah, I mean, we rely heavily on the generosity of individuals. We have a pretty diversified uh, funding base right now. We
Hmm.
have state money, we have some federal money, we have lots of different foundations who we apply to grants, and so it's really mixed. Some contracts, all different kinds of things. But the generosity of individuals and organizations and law firms,
Hmm.
we are closely aligned with many law firms. All of that, right? All of that support is really beneficial to us. So
This is not a question and it's really not a formulated thought, but I believe I was at your last your 10 years ago. I think I was at not your last. I was at one of your last galas.
so
I
we
think
have,
I
yeah, we
took
have
pictures.
yeah. Oh, yes,
Yeah.
because we have in normal years when we don't have an anniversary year, we have an equal access to justice
Yes.
reception. So we typically honor a couple of individuals. Um, and yeah, we have a local venue. Yeah.
And what flashed into my mind, Alexis, the Yale Legal Aid, not Yale Legal, the Yale Law School Legal Services, the
The
gentleman,
clinics. Yep.
the clinic, the
Yep.
gentleman that was headed that passed away about a year or so ago, 2 years ago.
Yes. Frank Deneen, I think you're talking about.
Let's lift up, and there was another gentleman also that would always wear his tie down,
Oh,
disheveled.
Jay Pottinger you're
Okay,
talking about.
let's
Yep.
lift up let's lift up their names. I mean, again, this is not a
Sure.
this the shows are live. My shows are live, but when something kind of comes about my mind, and just seeing these soldiers, and you mentioned the partnerships, just folks in the legal profession that are committed, and the backdrop psychologically is what's going on with the Supreme Court, and I'll get to that in a second with you. But let's lift up those two names a little bit.
Yeah. So Frank Deneen was actually one of our founding attorneys. He passed away a couple of years ago, and actually he is the longest serving legal aid attorney. When he passed, was the longest serving legal aid attorney in the country. And so really kind of all of our work is grounded in his leadership, his modeling of lawyer-client interaction, his
Mm.
modeling in mentoring new attorneys and law students. He really, really loved the work. Most of his work was around housing. So his legacy in the office is really around how we represent individuals in eviction matters and housing matters. But yeah, I think we think of him every day. We feel
Mm.
his presence every day, and continue to miss him. And then Jay Pottinger was a longtime professor at Yale Law School, and he was a clinical professor. And he and Frank actually co-taught the housing clinic for,
Good.
I want to say, decades
Mm.
together. Um, and Jay, up until he passed about a year ago, was still working with students, um, and had done a lot of work also in housing context, but also a lot in terms of housing policy.
Yes.
So I think, Frank was really rooted in and focused on individual representation. He felt very strongly about how we represent individuals. And Jay, I think, balanced that with his work, representing individuals, but also around how can we change some of these systems that are impacting hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals. And so whether it was, zoning policies or policies around affordability, all those kinds of things, Jay spent a lot of time in. One of the last things that we worked with Jay around was a lawyer for the day program.
Mm.
And so that's where you will have a lawyer kind of sit in housing court or in any court, but in this case, it was housing court, um, and meet with tenants as they came in,
Mm.
because court is confusing. There's nothing easy to understand about it. The notices you get from court or your landlord or whoever the opposing counsel is, um, really, a lot of times need to be interpreted.
Yes.
It's also stressful, right? If it's a situation where you're facing the loss of your housing or facing the loss of benefits or employment, whatever the loss is, it is stressful. And so we worked with Jay and his law students to basically have some space in the courthouse to
Mm.
be available to tenants as they came in. And I think it was fascinating, and it was such a learning experience. One, the impact that you can have on clients as they come in, um, but also the impact that you can have on opposing counsel, right?
Mm.
Who um, assume that they're going to have, a certain number of cases where the tenant is not represented, right?
Mm.
And kind of the mindset that they have going into that about how that negotiation is going to go or how the pressure is going to, like, all of that stuff. And then now all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, you're represented. You have someone, you have a lawyer that I have to talk to. I can't just pull you to the side and talk to you. And I'm not trying to totally degrade all landlord attorneys, but sometimes how it goes. And so shifting that power dynamic
Mm.
with just
Mhm.
that small lawyer for the day program, I think is was really educational for us. And I think also we've seen that with the Right to Counsel program as well, because we've now been able to increase the number of tenants that we work with and put more of that pressure on opposing counsel, put that pressure on judges, put that pressure on the mediators. So yeah.
Well, that's kind of, and I really appreciate your kind of responding so quickly because the thought just came to me, and just to kind of give homage to folks whose shoulders we stand on is just so. That's kind of one of the key things in my shows. I always try to find that nugget, that nugget of connection. Um, Politics, opposing counsels, judges, Supreme Court, state court, Supreme Court, state Supreme Court, uh, local circuit courts. Talk to me a little bit about that, and what does that mean? You're interfacing. Your job, correct me if I'm wrong, is really to be buddies with everyone, and sometimes there are these adversarial situations. But what is it like navigating this legal system? Because from the consumer, whether they read about the Supreme Court decisions or whether they hear about Biden trying to restructure some stuff. I think it was even this week. What did they hear that news? I think most people are either sometimes confused, disappointed, depressed, or can't even believe what's going on in the legal world.
Mm,
Uh,
mm.
and I know it's a very much of a macro question, but just if there's anything in there that I said that kind of teases you to respond about your navigating in this, I won't say jungle, but in this system, multi-layered system, but also political system, and also depending on parties and where people went to school and how you become VP for Trump. So just so have I said enough to kind of inspire you to
I
kind of
think so.
respond?
I think
Get me off the hook here a little bit.
well, don't get me in trouble because I'm not supposed to really talk
Indeed.
politics and be partisan. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's been a lot of chatter, I think, within the bar associations and within the groups that make up the legal community about the rule of law and the attack on the rule of law and this legal system that's supposed to be kind of the cornerstone of our society, right?
Yes.
Whether it's the ability to have a lawyer if you've been accused of a crime, right? And we have this system. Um, whether it's not being able to be deprived of certain rights
Mhm.
without due process, right? And so I think that the concern that I have and many other folks have is, what are all those things that we've, I think, almost taken for granted? Like,
Yes.
can we continue to do that, right?
Mm.
And how much of a fight and how I guess robustly do we need to gear up to be able to protect um,
Mm.
some of those things, right? I mean, and sometimes it's hard because Connecticut can feel a little bit like an oasis and feel so different from some other places. So, like when you talk about judges, for example, I mean, outside of probate court judges, there we don't have elections for
Mm.
for any of the judges, either at the state level or at the Supreme Court. Whereas if
Mhm.
you look at other places around the country, seeing what some of those elections have become, right? And so you have people who are nominees who are completely and totally unqualified, but who have an incredible amount of financial support
Mm.
because these different organizations with certain platforms really want to see this person in because they can do X, Y, and Z. And I think that plays out in other positions as well. Like
Mhm.
Bonnie Willis, for example, I did not realize until recently that she's got to run for her seat as district attorney in Fulton
Mm.
County, right?
Mhm.
And her opponent is someone that has really been supported significantly by the other side to try to get her out. And we're seeing a lot of those kinds of things in local, like board of ed elections,
Yes.
things like
Yes.
that. So I think that's a significant concern. And that, I think the other thing is to me always like how this impacts our community and our client community, right?
Yes.
Like if
Yes.
we have people in power, people in positions of decision making, um, that are going to make decisions, and it's really, really going to impact our clients in a negative way. Is there a way to get out in front of that, or or what's our role at New Haven Legal Assistance, if there is one, to generate that energy and generate that knowledge about how do we fight against this,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
because I think, quite frankly, like we get caught up here. I'll speak for me. I get caught up um, just making assumptions about, one of our kind of slogans is providing equal access to the justice system, right? And not always thinking about the justice system by many people is viewed as a violent system, right?
Mhm.
As an
Mhm.
inherently racist system, as an inherently sexist system. Like there's all of these things um, about the ways in which the legal system has operated. And so is that always the thing that we want to do, right? Or
Mhm.
is the thing that we want to do to change a system,
Yes.
whether it's legal system, education, something else, right? Is that the better approach? So I think balancing that, helping individuals, right, on a daily basis and meeting those individual needs, but also what are those larger scale things that we can have a bigger impact on.
Excellent, excellent. And again, to help to join the movement, people can come out to Gulf Street Park when?
August 10th, Saturday, August 10th from 12 to 5. Um, it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it. It's been a heavy lift planning, but I think it's really going to be great.
Excellent. And then
And that's a great location.
Reverend William Barber is going to kind of give you guys some additional marching orders when?
Additional marching orders on September 25th. That's a Wednesday at Anthony's Ocean View. That will start at 6 o'clock in the evening.
And if folks would like to kind of donate or support either of these causes or just the need for you to have, I won't use the term ammunition, but just resources and energy moving forward, how can they kind of contribute their time, talent, and or money?
Yeah. So if you go to our website, www.nhlegal.org, that's the best way to get all the information. You can also call us at 203-946-4811. One plug that I do want to make is that, there will be a lot of opportunities to volunteer at the block party and even in the days
Ah,
leading.
ah,
So if there are high school kids out there who
mhm.
need some community service hours, like, this would be
Yes.
a great opportunity for you to do that. So you can also call our number and let us know that you're interested.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Alexis, thank you, thank you, thank you for just thank you immensely. I'll see you soon. Keep hope alive and keep in shape. We haven't talked about your athletic exploits, but we'll get to that a little
Next
next
time.
time we talk because I do want to talk about maybe a show on women. This is separate from
Awesome.
the hat that you're wearing here, but just in terms of women's health and women's athletics. Just the female side, I'd
Yeah.
love your insight in that regard. So stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, dear.
Awesome.
Thank you so
Thanks so
much.
much. All right.
My,
Good to
my
see you.
pleasure.
All right. Bye.